and then
Dude,
you watched Morbius.
I watched Morbius, and man, I'm actually like it. All right, so you set the stage. You were like, it was bad, okay? So I was going, okay, how bad could this possibly be, right? So I'm watching it, and honestly, everything I was even thinking, figuring it out before it came on camera. Everything up to once he like kills everybody in the boat was okay. Like I actually cared about him and Milo as kids. They seem cool. I cared
Yeah,
about him like spending time with that girl who goes in the coma. Why she's even in the fucking movie, who knows?
because
Um,
she's pretty.
right?
Like that's
Like and I cared. Everything up to that was okay, but then it just fell apart. And I basically was like, I don't give a fuck about anyone in this movie. I don't care about Damon Targaryen because he's Damon Targaryen to me now. I don't care
yeah,
about Morbius. His girlfriend, like she's cool, but then like what happens to her at the end is kind of lame. Like just what?
yeah, super lame. And it wasn't even a surprise. Like you see him or she bites his lip or something, and then
Yeah,
I was like, I know where that's going. Like there was no surprises. I did have to look up like at the end of the movie when he calls like the bat storm, like when a
was that a
bazillion
thing?
bats
Yeah,
in
yeah,
New York
yeah.
City just show up. I was like, this is New York City, right? Like
Thank you.
there's not a lot of, but
There's not a lot of
apparently
bats.
there.
And I was like, I was already out of it. And then what I hate is when people make a movie in New York City. I haven't Googled it yet. It didn't look shot in New York City. That subway station was not a New York subway station. It's cheap to me. It's like, come on, dude. Like, don't like yuck. Like it's so cheap. Like it's one thing if you're the boys and you're like doing you're filming in Canada. I get it. It's a TV show, right? But you're a
Mhm.
movie. Okay, Morbius at best was a fucking streaming movie or like a TV movie. It was not Hollywood quality at all. And yet you got heavyweights like Leto and like what the
Matt Smith and yeah, like
it was. Oh my god, it was bad. I'm actually annoyed that I watched it, and I thought to myself, it can't be any worse than Venom 2. Dude, I think it's worse than Venom 2.
yeah,
It,
I
it,
think so too. And that's saying something because
it's
number
saying
one,
something.
Venom was bad. Venom 2 was worse, and this was even worse. And then like even the post, did you watch the post credit scenes? Did you stay
Both of
that
them
far? I was like, these are
bad.
bad. Like they're just like, we should start a group.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, dude, no. Like, please don't make any more of these. Like
And I also don't understand why he would team up with Vulture because Vulture is a bad guy anyway. So Morbius has been like, I can't kill people. I have to. He's all
yeah.
virtuous, and all of a sudden, for no reason, he just meets up with Vulture. Like, ah, it's just lame. It's just so forced, so whack, so stitched together, so colored by numbers, and there wasn't even like any memorable musical cues. And I think that is important in a superhero movie. It was just bad. And the director, who the fuck is it? Who the fuck is the director? Like the whole thing was just so bush league, man. Ah, anyway, I felt like so if anything, Moonfall was actually like I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it at all. Whereas that Venom, I almost called it Venom. He even says I am Venom in the movie, like it's supposed to be funny. Like it was bad, dude. And I was rooting for it. Okay, one thing I will say though, I did like the fight scenes, but I also felt it suffered a bit of Transformers itis, as in like it's so fast you can't even see what's happening,
Yep.
So that I feel like really what happened was they discovered the technology to make those fight scenes, and just
Yeah.
decided to write some shit around it. Like that's all that movie was.
Yeah. It just like in the whole movement. And then like, yeah, that's true though. Like every time, um, every time he did like the Sonic thing, they just like stuck on it. It's like my complaint about Star Trek the movie when like they could go up to the Enterprise, like they're just like, look at this thing we can do. We're gonna do it over and over and over again, even if even if you understand the concept of it. They're like,
Yeah.
we're gonna beat this. So like when he was tracking her down at the end, and it was just like doing its thing, like I was just please stop. I was like, just please stop. Just how about do the movie? Do some like I don't know some character development. not just he eats people, but it doesn't want to eat people. But good thing he happened to be developing this fake blood at the time, so he didn't have to eat people. I was
right,
like, what?
right.
I was like,
And then
none of it. Like everything was just convenient. Like everything that happened was just like, yeah, this is just needs to be here.
and all the characters were just whack. Like Tyrese is just kind of this gruff, like that's not really you. And then that his partner, I felt like was trying to be all MCU-ish with like his little humor and quips.
Yeah.
Just
Which
weren't
and that guy's a stand up comic. He's actually really funny. I actually saw him a long time ago now, but he's funny.
okay.
Um, but yeah, it was just throwaway. Like none of the jokes really worked because they didn't fit the tone of the rest of the movie. Welcome to the All Pop No Culture podcast. I'm your host this week, Kevin. I am joined by Andrew. Everybody else has stuff going on this week. There's like a 1% chance that Andy might drop in, but I think that's even lower than 1%. Pete is still being old. He is being assaulted by the weather in California, which is insanely hot, and he does work outdoors a lot of the time.
Okay.
So he might, you've seen Pete. He's not svelte, so it's probably tiring. I get it. And Kim was doing homework. She had better things to do. So it's me and Andrew, and we've done this before, and we'll do it again, and we don't really have any problem doing it. So we'll jump right into it. I've got a picture behind me. We this morning, no, yesterday, Moonfall, the 2022 epic Roland Emmerich disaster movie, dropped on HBOMax. And so I remember seeing the trailers for this, and immediately I was like, no, just no. It looked absolutely ridiculous, absolutely preposterous. And the more trailers I watched, I was like, I don't want to pay for it, but part of me kind of has to watch it to see how bad it is. And so when it dropped, I don't know. I don't know if it was Andy that posted that it dropped, or Pete did, or somebody in our chat posted it dropped, and I was like, well, fuck, I got to go check that out. And so today I watched it with my kids, and I'll say what I said to you before we start really talking about it, but I laughed so much during this movie, and it is not a comedy. It's like that's the simplest way I can describe it. Like it's just bad.
So, my thoughts on Moonfall. I remember when the trailer came out, and to me, what worried me was I had not heard anything about this movie, and then all of a sudden, I think the first trailers came out like I don't know, maybe like December or something, like really late
Mhm.
last year, and then it dropped February or March, and I'm like, okay, we haven't heard anything about this. It's probably going to be bad. Like, why are you dropping it now and not like in summertime, like when the real blockbusters are out, right? So
Mhm.
then I also saw. I think I posted on Facebook. I think I'm going to watch it, and then I was warned by my older brother who said, "Dude, I saw it." He posted the Admiral Akbar, like it's a trap, and then he said, "I saw it. Don't do it to yourself." But then you convinced me, because I was legitimately like, yes, I was gonna take a nap before this show, and you were like, no, dude, like you got to watch this. It'd be cooler if you did, So I watched it, and I gotta say, I didn't hate it, and I don't know if that's gonna like make people not trust my taste anymore, but like I didn't hate it. Like I didn't hate it. And I think I'm almost saying I didn't hate it because I don't want people to not trust me. But I there were aspects of the film that definitely spoke to me. And I have to say, ever since okay, let me gather my thoughts. Okay. Ever since Independence Day completely gave me life back in 96, I have been waiting for Centropolis films, it used to be Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich together. They have not since made a film as good as Independence Day. So I feel like every time I feel like Charlie Brown running up to the football, to kick and Lucy moves it away. It's like that's how I feel played by these damn films. But I have to say, of all the Emmerich films, although I might have missed a couple, but anyway, of all of them I've seen, this is the one I didn't hate. I was let down by 2012, but this one I was actually like, you put some thought into this, man. So let's get into it. But I can defend this movie. I will do my best to defend why I liked it. So
Yeah. So, like I said, I read an interesting review of it afterwards because, like, part of me, as someone who studied science and worked in this stuff, I was like, none of this shit is possible. Like, scientifically speaking, it was just ridiculous. Like, so many things were wrong. So I think, what did I said I typed in everything wrong with, and immediately, like, the third thing was Moonfall, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm not the only one. So I went in and I started reading an article, and, like, one article was like, I don't know if this was like an intentional movie or if they're just, like, literally just punking everyone. Like, did they spend $140 million on a prank? Like, because it's so ridiculous. Like, number one, like, in real life, the moon is moving away from the Earth, not getting closer, right? Like, it not quickly, like, we don't have to worry about it in our lifetime or many lifetimes, but it's moving away from us. We've done enough, regular science to know that it's not hollow, right? We use lasers and we use radio waves and we use all kinds of shit. We know it's not, hollow. I mean, that's the stuff I can actually forgive. Like, that's the plot of the movie, is that
fair.
the moon is something else, right? So, okay, fine. But when the moon gets closer, the ocean doesn't just, like, come into the sky. Like, it could reduce gravity on Earth, but the moon would have to have more gravity than the Earth itself for things to start moving away from the Earth towards the moon. So, like, the whole gravity waves, like, I was reading an article and somebody's like, yeah, I don't even know what that is. Like, they're talking about gravity waves. Now, tidal waves, possibly. Seismic events, maybe. Like, some of those things were okay. But at one point right at the end of the film, you actually see the moon, like, scraping the Earth.
That
Like, it's
was nuts.
and I was
That
like,
that was
oh,
that was
okay.
I loved it. I mean, I was just like, this is crazy. And then you actually see Manhattan, like, getting, like, pretty much fucked up. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, I'm dead. But I was probably dead even before it got to that point because I wasn't in Colorado or whatever. But no, I loved it. I loved it. And all right, so let me just like calm the hell down because I'm excited. So basically, one of the things I love about these films is that they take these random ordinary characters like a Samuel Tarly in this movie, right? Like,
Mhm.
you go back to Independence Day, it's like, literally, the taxi drivers, the dad of, like, oh my god, what's his name? You know what I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
yeah,
From Taxi, for literally from
yes,
Taxi.
yes, but like
Uh,
he plays his
Hirsch,
dad.
Hirsch, Judd
Judd Hirsch, yeah,
Hirsch.
yeah. But it's like literally it's just a constellation of random people. Will Smith's wife is like a exotic dancer and everything. So it's like it's letting the everyman, like, be a hero, or even Randy Quaid when he flies up into the spaceship, right? So to have Samuel Tarly be this guy who wants to be NASA, calls himself a doctor, but ends up actually at the end of the day being like one of the MVPs of this whole thing, to me is such a redemption. And then to even find out later, dude, you guys, we had this conversation. I'm all about immortality, dude. He just achieved immortality, baby. Like,
Well, that's that made me laugh so hard because I was watching with my kids and I was like, as soon as he showed, like, I think when it ended, I was like, God, they couldn't, like, there's no way they could do another one. Like, there's, like, what would they do? And at the very end, when they're like, we've got to get started, and I was like, fuck
what?
yes. Like, this movie was so bad, right? Like,
Yes.
it was so bad, and part of me was like, God, I hope they make a sequel.
Well, you know
Like
what?
just because I need a bigger disaster. Like like
I have good news for you. It's not gonna happen, I think, unless it's like, DVD or whatever. Or not, I can't believe it's DVD. Anyway, um, John Bradley, who is of course Samwell, he said if Roland goes down the direction he wants to, the sequels would be even more batshit crazy than the first. Because in January, Emmerich said he spoke about the possibility of filming two sequels back to back if the first film was a success. Well, we all know what
well,
happened.
it was
So
not.
it ain't happening. But
That's
he had a
that
plan.
that's the thing. I told you about the pitch meetings, right? At the
Mhm.
very end, they say, usually they're like, oh, what could go wrong or whatever. And I think at the end of this one, they're like, this is definitely going to be a success, and it cuts to like the opening weekend news
Number.
article where it says filmed for 140 million, made 10 million. And you're like, oof, like it just, I mean, it bombed hard. I
Hard.
think part of it was the release time, but um it was it was ridiculous. Like it was I can see why people weren't drawn to this movie. Uh and I think the trailers made it look too serious, maybe.
You're
Like
right. Yeah,
if it had looked a little more silly, which I know wasn't really the where they were going, but I mean that's sure what made me enjoy it was the fact that it was just
absolutely.
completely batshit. Like it was completely unbelievable.
I mean, they really should. I think yeah, I think it was marketed wrong. You're absolutely right. It was marketed as, I mean, Halle Berry, you don't think of her as being part of a screwball comedy movie. You think of her as having gravitas. And then the other guy, frankly, the whole time I'm watching Patrick Wilson, I'm going, okay, I think he was probably the second choice. He probably wanted Chris Pratt. The whole time I'm seeing his character do his thing, I'm thinking Chris Pratt all the way. And they had to settle for fucking Patrick. I like you, Patrick. You were good as Night Owl, but you know, you're not Chris. I also, in a way, it never would have happened. But I would have loved to see Hugh Jackman in that role because Hugh Jackman and Halle Berry together, like when he was Wolverine and Storm, they have great chemistry, and she was
Mhm.
giving me serious Storm vibes in this movie. So, um, you know, I'm now if you don't mind, can I talk about like what I
Oh
liked
yeah,
about it?
yeah,
Absolutely.
for
Okay, here we
sure.
go. So I loved the fact that like I am all about like ancient ancestral, like the original ancestral race, or there's a term for this. If the anyways, this ancestral race, whatever. Point is,
Yeah,
there's an
it's like
ancestral race
it's
that
first
like,
civilization or something like
yeah, the
that, right?
first
Yeah,
ancestral race, the far, yes, the
yeah.
first ancestral race. Okay, so all my stuff like Evangelion, there's a first ancestral race. And even Macross, not Robotech, but the original Macross, there's a first ancestral race that seeded the Earth, but they also made the Zentradi. Um, and in this film, we're talking billions of years ago. Oh, even Battlestar Galactica. Yo, the fact that there's an Earth. Okay, if you haven't seen Battlestar Galactica, do not listen to this. But if you
Yeah,
have,
it's your own
okay,
damn fault
whatever.
at this
There's
point.
an Earth One and an Earth Two, dude. So so I'm sitting there in my bed, like going, we live on Earth Two. So there was Earth One. Like it just boggles the brain. So anyway, going back to this movie. So you think it's just this random ass disaster movie with like these like nanotechnology aliens floating around and shit, but then you find out that no, these aliens and the first ancestral race were in a war billions of years ago, and they literally built these giant fucking white dwarf things, and then the aliens destroyed all of them except for one, and that one made it to Earth. Like that is so fucking cool to me because it just means the whole scale of the story just got it's ginormous. And it also makes me think about, this is why I want to live forever. I want to see that kind of thing. I want to see other planets. I want to, the space is so huge, and this film to me like illustrated just how big space really is. So that's like, if you bring in first ancestral race, I'm in. Like I'm hooked. That is my shit. Secondly, again, the visuals. So when you got like the moon hanging in the sky, mad close, and even at the end of the movie, it's like right
Yeah,
there. I think there's
it's closer
even
than it
like,
should be for sure.
yes,
Like
and
there
there's
would
like,
still be a lot of natural disasters if the moon was that close. Like it needs to
there,
get back to where the fuck it was, or
there,
or we're gonna have some
there.
tidal issues.
fair, but like it's just I love seeing that. And I've actually even seen commercials where I remember being in a car driving with my parents, like, like long distances and seeing the moon in the sky and imagining, can you just imagine like if you just drove and all of a sudden in the middle of the road, the moon was just chilling, like just gigantic moon, just chilling, but it's still glowing. It's still like glowing white, like whatever. Like I think about that shit. And I saw a car commercial with that. So I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one thinking that shit. Anyway, I love seeing big ass celestial bodies in the sky. And there are a lot of that in that movie. So between Chris Pratt, Storm, Samuel Tarly, great visuals, and the first ancestral race, I was actually down with the sickness. I was down with the sickness that is this movie. I'm not saying I loved it because then you guys will not trust me anymore, but I will say I didn't hate it. So if you're a sci-fi guy, if you're, well, you are too, and you didn't like it because you were
I
like,
am.
but like if you like just, I don't know,
Well, I
big
there
scale
a
storytelling, you
few
get into
years
that.
ago there was a movie on Netflix, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was, but it was Korean, I think.
Hmm.
And the idea behind it is that the Earth was dying, our sun was going to explode, and they literally had to move the Earth, like literally had to move the Earth to another solar system, and that's the whole plot of the movie. It's stupid and ridiculous, and it like the idea behind it is almost as ridiculous as this, but it didn't have any of the fun. But the reason that I tried to watch it is because at the time that it came out, it was the biggest blockbuster in the world because it landed in China and they
Oh,
loved it in China. It didn't even hit theaters here.
huh.
I think it was, fuck, I can't
I'm
remember.
looking for this,
For the
man.
life of me, can't remember what it's called. It would have been 2 or 3 years ago,
I'm all over it.
but yeah, it was not good.
Oh,
but
okay.
like with this film, like there was just all kinds of like, I mean, there's like I said, it's so problematic. Like they pulled the spaceship Endeavour out of a museum and launched it within a day, right? At one point, they had 28 minutes to launch to do an entire rocket launch. Like I was like, what? Do we
These
have the fuel lying around? Like, what are we doing? Like,
these films are all about ridiculous optimism. Like seriously, like shit. Like remember going back to Independence Day. Like seriously, a computer virus, like a computer, like that's what
yeah,
stopped the aliens. Like so, it just so
well, that was
happens
some
that
War of the World shit right there, right? Like
our
they
shit
were
like
trying.
actually like communicates with their shit. Like really,
Mm-hmm.
and then so many
Yeah,
times where like they're driving and like as the gravity like thing whatever is happening, it just happens to kill the people who are chasing them, but like they
yeah,
somehow
but they make it.
survive.
Yeah,
Like come on, like but that's what these movies do. Or even again going back to Independence Day, when remember when Vivica Fox is in the tunnel and the fire's coming and they fucking like jump
the
into the little
worst
side
CGI
area,
in the movie
and
when the
then
dog
yeah,
jumps in
and
front
then
of the fire.
the dog actually like makes it like just right when the fire goes by. Like it's the movie was done. If this movie had come out like in the 90s, I think it would have done better. I just think that we're over it. I think we're over that ridiculous level of silly, giddy optimism. But again, yeah, I think the difference between this movie and we talked about Morbius already is that I actually did latch on some of the characters, and I think in the main three, I think I can call him Tarly, Chris Pratt, number two, and Halle Berry. Like I actually liked
Yeah.
them as characters. So and we even talked about the families, but like I was into like the son of Chris Pratt. He was cool. Like he was, he made himself useful. The exchange student, I'm not gonna lie, she was hot. Um, but yeah, I think that we so basically just yeah, I would just say, you know what? I think we're both saying see it, but we're also saying manage your expectations and maybe laugh your ass off, especially if you know
Yeah,
anything else.
my recommendation would definitely be to watch it with a couple of friends, because that way at least if you're watching it and stuff's going on, you're just like, what? Then at least you have somebody to look at who's also fucking confused, and then you can just laugh at it. Because it, it's it is fun. Like really like my kids would have hated it if we weren't laughing so much, but instead, like, I mean, we were laughing hard when that movie ended. So it was, it was fun for us. I again, I don't think it's a movie necessarily for everyone. And I definitely think there's going to be people out there um, that watch it and are like, "This is a piece of shit," and I just hate it.
My older
Like,
brother.
I'm for sure there's people out there like that. But if you take it in the right light, one way or the other, I think you can enjoy it. Like I said, if they somehow made a sequel, I don't think I would go see it in the theater.
No,
Um,
no.
but I would be excited for it to come out on streaming. Like, I would watch it with the full expectation that it's probably as bad or worse than this. The one thing that I read too in one of the articles is that the person um, that was reviewing it said they saw it in the theater, and really, like, around the theater there was a whole bunch of people just like laughing in parts that shouldn't have been laughing at. There's a whole bunch of like, what the fuck's coming from the crowd. So, like, but he was like, seeing it in that theater environment actually made it entertaining.
Yeah.
Like, because it's not, it's just, at the end of the day, it's not a great movie. Like, there's, again, it's super problematic, but you get past that and just enjoy it, and it's not the worst thing in the world. Like,
Yeah.
Morbius was worse. Like, Morbius was a worse movie because, like, it took itself seriously the whole time.
Yes.
All of the acting was heavy. Like, everything was wrong. Like, that one just sucked. I can't even. Sony needs to stop. Somebody needs to buy Sony and cancel every movie they're making.
So you know what? I said we were going to talk about it, but I just wanted to just give a little lip service to it, though. So I'm not gonna lie. When I saw Matt Smith, I was like, "Oh, Matt Smith's in this? Oh shit, okay."
Yeah.
Donald Sutherland's in this. Oh shit, okay. Like, I actually thought there was hope. Um, my favorite scene in the whole movie was probably in the subway where Matt Smith's character kills the cops. Like, he, like, not because I don't like cops, like, it's clear. It's not that. It's just that he's a badass. Like, he's basically, I think he was training to be Damien. Or yeah, Damon rather. Is it Damien or whatever? I think it's Damon. He was training to be Damon because he's just basically this guy who, like, is kind of, like, he just wants to do his own thing. But nothing felt earned in that movie at all. It just felt like we were supposed to just buy these characters and care about these characters. There was no one I give a shit about. No one. Not even
Yeah,
more.
and somehow, like, he just got a hold of his serum.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Like,
I was like, when? I was like, when? He
and
kicked him
who
out of the
injected
thing.
it? Who injected it? Because,
Yeah.
like, it's a whole process. Like, it was just so much wrong with it, man. Oh, it was horrible. Yes, you're right. It's Sony. Like, what are you doing? We know Madam Web's gonna be a fucking. I mean, we'll find
Oh,
out, but it's gonna be bad. We have no reason to believe it's gonna be good based on that track.
mm-mm.
Skip Morbius. It's not Morbin time. I think it's hilarious that they brought it back to the theater. They brought that back to the
Well,
theater.
but they brought it back because it was like trending on social media, and some person there did not
Troll.
realize that it was trending because it was bad. Like, that's the thing. Like, it was trending because people were like, "This is a garbage film," and they're like, "Cool, everybody's talking about it. Let's put it back out." And it made like $3 more. Like, it bombed again.
Oh my god. Well, I think we covered two films that bombed,
Yes.
but one was less of a bomb than the other. So that's our word. And then I think we said we were going to talk about She-Hulk.
She-Hulk, which is an interesting thing in itself, man. I'm having a hard time with She-Hulk. Like, it is by far my least favorite Marvel TV show. When I look at it compared to the list that I haven't yet completed, the only thing I would put below it is the Incredible Hulk. Like, it's, for me, it's not working, and I love her.
Tatiana.
Absolutely love her. And it's crazy to me that what feels like the saving moment of the show is a random cameo by some girl we haven't even seen before,
Yes.
who completely stole
Oh,
the
the
show in that
show.
episode.
Yes.
Um,
Madison.
and Madison with with a Y and two
Why?
N's
And not
and
what
not
you
where you
think.
think it is. Like she's so fucking great. And like so we watched 2 episodes this week because we missed last week. So the
Right.
first one was the trial of Emil Blonsky, and um it just like I said, like for me, um it's not enough courtroom drama. Like that one actually had the most, I think, of any episode of the courtroom stuff, but it just went by so fast. Like there's for a good courtroom show, like I think of something like Boston Legal, and a lot of that show took place in the courtroom because you had to show the savvy of the lawyers. Like you had to be impressed by them as a lawyer, and every time she's been in court, she seems confused. Like she doesn't have the situation under control. She never has the situation under control. So like as a character, she's a bad lawyer. At least that's what they put across. We've never seen her be a good dominant lawyer. She's just somebody that has a job because she turned green, you know. Um and like they're not playing her up, and then they're playing like the relationship stuff that which in its own way was, and you said it was kind of poignant, right? Like to see this like mix of as herself, the guy she got sucked. As She-Hulk, she got this super like hunky dude and it was all great and whatever. And then the next morning when she was herself, he was like, whoa, I gotta go by. Like that was some like pretty like intelligent shit. But for the same complaint I have, um is that it's all too fast. Like it just goes by too fast. And why, like some of the stuff doesn't work. Like why would Wong pull her into that battle with those little demon things? Like why would she be the choice? Like why wouldn't he go get, I don't know, anybody else from the Sanctum Sanctorum to deal with it? um it's just, I don't know, the show just doesn't work for me. And like the jokes on, like I, I feel like I'm in the minority from looking at social media, but I wasn't down with the whole Megan the Stallion thing at the end of the episode. Like that didn't do it for me. It felt, it felt cheap. Like it felt like it was a gag for the sake of having a gag. And it was trippy to me in the third episode when she starts off, she's like, "Oh, this isn't a cameo show," and then she lists all the cameos, and I'm like, but that's all it's been, has been a cameo show, and soon we're gonna have Daredevil.
Right.
And when it's only 25 minutes long or 30 minutes long, if you have a cameo of the week, that's a significant portion of the show that's supposed to belong to her.
So, it's funny. Like, okay, first of all, I thought it was funny that we took like the week off, um, the week when this whole twerk, like I almost call it twerk gate, because
Yeah.
it was everywhere. Um, and it got really divisive, and people were starting to get nasty and say things like, if you didn't like twerk gate, then you're just some like incel or whatever. And that probably does exist. But I remember saying, like someone was like, hey, if it was like Taylor Swift doing like a line dance or something, like would it have got the same reaction? And I'm like, well, honestly, line dancing and twerking are not it's apples and oranges, dude. Twerking is a little sexual, line dancing isn't, and America is not really down with the sickness when it comes to sexual shit on a quote unquote mass level. We saw what happened with Janet Jackson at the Super Bowl, for example,
Right.
ruined her career. So that
And
said,
it's a family thing too, sort of. Like the expectation is if it's on Disney Plus,
yes,
you ought to
yes.
be able to watch it with your family.
Yes, expectation. I mean, not be exactly accurate because they do curse a little bit and whatever, like and
Yeah.
Deadpool's on
Yeah.
there. But you're right. You're absolutely right. Um, what I think why the show is working for the people who like it is I would describe She-Hulk as probably just it's a vibe. And when you describe anything as a vibe, yeah, it doesn't really have a plot. It's just like we're just gonna like marinate in this vibe of of um of whatever it is that we are. It's hard to like put it into words, but it's definitely a vibe. Like you got, the music's a bit more like a lot of the music I don't know. It's not really my generation. It's definitely lighter in terms of humor, but the humor is also, I think it's definitely a more of a woman or female gaze as far as what the show is the worldview of the show. Um, I'm not sure though what they're trying to do with Madison, because I almost see Madison as kind of a caricature, like almost like a lampooning of like your typical like party girl. And again, she's
Yeah.
hilarious, but I also, as someone who, you know, definitely is conscious of stereotypical depictions of groups of people, so to speak. I think you smell what I'm cooking there.
Yeah.
I wonder about that. Even if it's a woman creating the show, I'm not sure what she's trying to accomplish with that, but she's entertaining. Um, I also think the reason why Marvel is just kicking ass in general is because they're not one note. Like that's the thing between like say a Star Wars and like Marvel Studios, because like people talk about Star Wars fatigue. That's why Han Solo didn't like succeed. But I'd always go, okay, how come Marvel has 23 movies and Star Wars only has like nine? Like, shut the fuck up. It's not fatigue. You're just not executing well enough. And what Marvel does, as we all know, is they just take different genres, and then dress them up in like some superhero-esque stuff. We've never seen a She-Hulk show before. It is that courtroom drama. And I will say that we did get a little courtroom, a little bit. I'm not saying it's like a lot, but we dealt with it with the whole Donnie Blaze, because like she wants to court the cease and desist or whatever doesn't happen. We also meet that elf from Asgard, who's like
She was
impersonating
funny.
everyone.
Like, yeah,
Um,
when she impersonates him leaving the office, she's
yeah.
like, "I'm totally gonna sexually harass you and you." And he's like, "Okay."
So it's just I know people who like the show. I'm with you. Yeah, I wouldn't rank it, highly. But I think what it is doing is it's solidifying a group of fans who aren't really crazy about maybe the other aspects, but they do like this show. It's just different. Yeah, if you're watching this podcast right now and you like She-Hulk, tell us why.
Yeah,
Seriously, I
I'm a-
love
I'm actually, yeah,
perspective.
I'm genuinely curious about who is enjoying the show, because like on the one hand, I see a lot of critical reviews that are actually really positive, but if you look at like IMDb, across the board it's like a 6. Like every episode is like a 6. Even the last one that they gave a 9 is like a 6.6, 6.5. And for me, I mean, that's really what it is. For as much as I love the episode, if you are going to like just take a scale and compare this to even just Miss Marvel, the last thing that came out, Miss Marvel is like light years ahead. Every single episode of Miss Marvel is so much better than every episode of the show. Like my entire family is like, we're gonna finish She-Hulk, but we'll probably never watch it again. Like nobody in my house is really enjoying it. And granted, maybe we're not the target audience, um, but that's kind of a bummer. Like for Marvel, who has done a pretty good job of making everyone the target audience on most shows, to miss the mark on this one um, is a bummer. Like I said, I love Tatiana Maslany. Ever since Orphan Black, like she's amazing, um, and I feel like she's a little underutilized. Like that she's not always the focus of the show. Um, I think I posted, I think it was on Twitter, but I posted like with the whole Madison thing. I'm like, dude, I just want her to stick up. Like, I want her to be Wong's girlfriend for the rest of the
Thank
MCU.
you.
Like,
Thank you.
just like I just want it to be like a thing where like he really doesn't want it, but at the same time, like he totally wants it. Like he totally like he just digs this chick. no matter how hard he doesn't want to. Like he's and just have it be the gag, like the whole Wongers thing and like everything. She's so funny, and I'm glad for somebody that I've never heard of. Right, like she's not a
Right.
big name actress.
I've never heard of her.
Um, uh, I'm really excited to see somebody like that get their moment. Like I would love to see her as an actress blow up from this because she's really funny.
Yeah,
You
no,
know, it's one part, it's one thing, um, and but I think she nailed what she had. Like she wasn't given a lot, but she crushed it. So hopefully that gets her in the door somewhere else where we can see if she's actually, you know, really talented or not. But um, so I
her, Michael Pena in the Ant-Man films, and then
yes.
oh my God, what's her name? You know I'm talking about, the one who always say would be a great Baroness, but her voice is too high. I feel like those three
Oh yes,
characters,
yes, 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 yes. Kat
they
Denning.
Kat Dennings, yeah. Like I think they all kind of had like they all nail their lane. And then on an incredibly nerdy tip, the whole Wong um and Madison thing, like I don't know if Wong is an INTJ or Madison's ENFP, but for the Myers-Briggs nerds, like that's the thing. Like INTJ, ENFP, like they like that's what's happening. Because like INTJs are really serious and reserved. ENFPs are these like social butterflies, but for some reason they just have this really odd chemistry. And yeah, I think that they actually had a lot of chemistry. I bought it completely. Which and it's so unlikely, but it's like he's all I like what did he say, gin and tonic? And she's like, oh, okay. Like that was like I bought it. So yeah, I think She-Hulk is
And how she kept ruining shows for him. Like she ruined
yo,
Sopranos. And he's
yes.
just like, oh, like just everything about it was just fun. Like that, honestly, that interaction was the single most fun thing that has been on that show the entire time.
Oh,
Uh,
oh. I was gonna say the reason why I think he got her though, you're right. Like get someone from the Sanctum Sanctorum, whatever. But because she's familiar with this Donnie Blaze guy, and it's Donnie Blaze's fault for doing it, and because she is a Hulk and she can actually like physically handle these guys, these demon things, that's why he went and got her. But obviously, it's because he's on the damn show. But like, so I was okay with that. Um, but I also want to see like what they're gonna do with this whole dating thing, because that was like you mentioned it, that was I think that was very brave. I don't know if I've ever seen a show legitimately like say looks matter. I've never seen that.
yeah.
Never. And that's what the show said. I mean, she says it when she's fighting the demons, and she's like, oh, and he's very, very hot. Not that it matters, but it does. She says that, and then come to find out that this guy who's saying all the right things, like, I don't want to talk about myself. I want to hear you say something. And then like, but then he sees her in the morning, he's like, deuces. Like, you can keep my shirt. Like, I'm out. Ouch, man. Like
Yeah.
she made breakfast. Like
And she
that
was
was
so happy. Like that's the thing
she
too,
was
right? She was
so
so happy.
happy. So like, yeah, like, what's she gonna do? Is she gonna like maybe not care about looks or something? Like, ow. Or is that just like a little? Is that a vibe? Just a
I
vibe?
mean, I feel like just based on the casting that she's ultimately going to end up with that other lawyer dude, like because that's what happens on these shows.
Sure.
Um, they haven't really interacted yet, but like he's a good looking guy. She's she's the girl on the show. I feel like that's what will happen just because that's what happens on a show like this. Now the MCU is really good about doing shit different. So maybe not. Um, but he's obviously better looking than the dude that that thought he was dating Megan the Stallion.
Hilarious. Are
So
we only at
like
episode 4, by the way?
yes, we're at the
Yeah.
halfway point right now.
Okay.
So there's 4 episodes left. We get Daredevil soon. Titania's coming back, so we're gonna have Jamila Jamil in I think the next episode.
Cool.
Who I love her. I'm really like I've been waiting for her to show up more because as an actress, I love her.
I heard
Um,
it was her idea to get Megan on the show.
I believe that,
Okay.
and there's some behind the scenes stuff that shows that like all for what it's worth, all of the dance moves that She Hulk is doing was
Uh-huh.
Tatiana Maslany. Like that was legit her. They put her up on a, like if you see the behind the scene, they put a table, like a long
Oh,
table up
wow.
for her to dance on so she could be at the right height. But it was all her. Like they put her in a mocap suit and they did it all. So
Nice.
um
Props.
yeah. So you know, it is what it is. I don't, without doing something incredible in these last 4 episodes, it's
No
definitely
pun
not going to be
intended.
my favorite. I will watch it again because I'm doing the whole MCU rewatch, so I'll get to it again. But I don't know. I don't know what it can do for me to really be like, oh, I really loved that. And generally speaking, with the MCU, when I'm done with something that they've put out, I'm like, I really love that one way or the other. Like I've even said, like even the Incredible Hulk, like it maybe it's not great, but I'd watch it again.
So it's funny you mentioned the Incredible Hulk because did you see that the villain in I think it's going to be in Captain America, the new one,
Yes, the new
where he's
Captain
going to
America is
be
going to be,
the villain or one of the guys from the Incredible Hulk movie.
yeah, which they actually said a long time ago that that actor is in fact that character. Um, what's his name? It's not the Thinker. It's the
I know
leader, the leader,
the
the
leader.
leader.
Okay.
Um, and so yeah, that's really it's nice to see them tie back into that stuff because they don't necessarily have to. Like they could recast these parts and not really apologize for it because number one is so old, but number two, it technically wasn't MCU, right? It's a Paramount film at the time.
Correct.
Um, and so it's cool. It's cool. Like to see Emil Blonsky get his go, to get all that. So it worked out, as well as it can. Um, but yeah, She-Hulk. I'm curious to see what comes next. Like I'll watch it. Like I said, it's harder and harder to get my whole family to watch. Like I feel like I'm losing one kid a week
Oh no.
watching it. Um, but I hope it pays off. And it's like we're watching. It's almost like we're watching it to see like what keys it's unlocking for the rest of
Yeah.
um, the next phases of the MCU. Like it's kind of the gateway drug to the rest of the MCU.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there.
Was there even an after credit scene? I
Yes.
remember.
What was the after credit scene in the fourth one? Was it just? I think it was just her and Wong watching TV again.
You're right. You're right. You're right. Yeah.
That might have actually even been the drink jokes when they were talking about the different drinks but it was them curled up on a couch and that's why I'm like, dude, this is
Beautiful.
like
Yes.
I love them. Like I want more of them. Like just all the time. I want more of them. It was hilarious. Plus, like I looked at her IMDb page. She's pretty hot. Like she's kind of the party girl, kind of a mess on this, but like the rest of her IMDb like headshots and stuff, I was like, she's really pretty. Like she if this works out for her, like she could have a little blow up moment, you know.
At first, I thought it was like when she first showed up, I thought it was Soleil Moon Frye from Funky Brewster for a split second. But then I was like, no, no, this is just somebody else who's really charismatic. So, yeah, we have handled She-Hulk.
Yes.
Now,
So to um on to more of our current cultural relevance. Um Amazon Prime has dropped a new show, The Lord of the Rings, is it the Rings of Power? The Rings
Rings
of
of
Power with an
Power.
S, right?
Yep.
There's only been 3 episodes so far. Two of them dropped at once, and then the third one came this last Thursday, I think.
Did you watch it
And
yet? I haven't.
I've watched all 3 episodes.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's okay. You can spoil me.
Um,
Good.
I don't know that I can spoil it because it's such a different show. Like there was a lot of people before that dropped that were worried that it would compare to Game of Thrones, and it completely does not. It's a completely different thing to me. Like you have like a fantasy adventure, right? Like that's what it is. There's bad guys and good guys and all that stuff. like Game of Thrones is dark. Like Game of Thrones is like dark fantasy, like people's machinations and
Political
politics and
intrigue. Yes.
murder. There's a whole lot less um like active like murder in Lord of the Rings. So like it's battlefield type stuff. We see a lot of people go down with arrows. In the third episode, a dude gets taken down in a pretty um in a pretty disappointing way. Like not like as in like, oh, they did a bad job making that, but when the dude goes down, you're like, fuck, like you um but it's interesting. It's a much slower paced show
Yeah.
than Game of Thrones, so it's hard to even really compare. Like everything about it is different.
Yeah.
Um,
Keep going, sorry.
no, no, no. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I definitely watched Game of Thrones first, but this show I felt like was, yeah, it wasn't nearly as grim. And it was more like I'm being taken on a journey into this very, very different world. I'm seeing like the elf world, and I'm seeing Galadriel kind of like really believe in herself and not give up on her
Hmm.
mission. That was really cool. The Harfoots, and again, I'm trying not to spoil myself, but I see them as like, are they like a strain of hobbits or something? Like what are
Yes,
yeah,
yes. As a
okay.
matter of fact, they are there. Yeah, I saw that in an article somewhere.
So yeah, I see the Harfoots, and I'm just kind of like, this is cool, like, and then seeing like the dynamic between Elrond and like the dwarf, as far as like, oh, and then even seeing Minas Tirith. I think that's what, or the Mines of Moria. I think it was one of the two. Either way, they go to those mines, and I go like,
Yeah,
man,
it wasn't Moria. I think you're right. I think it was Minas Tirith. It was somewhere else, but
okay,
like that was like visually, I was like,
yes.
the dwarves are doing some shit. Like that looked um it looked amazing.
Yes. And
Um
I like just that the dynamic, like how, they had the whole hammer thing, like, like he had to work his way back in. And again, it goes back to like, again, Myers-Briggs, but like even personalities, like the Elrond had no idea that the dwarf guy was so offended that he had to
yeah,
come
yeah.
over. Like, but and like, but I loved how like he's like, you're not staying for dinner. Like you're like, it's just like, but Elrond knew that, I just got to like, I have to say sorry. I have to come correct on this, and he did. And that endeared me to everyone in that situation. The dwarf, his wife, Elrond himself, like these are old friends, and they're just gonna
Hmm.
mend fences. There's some real hurt there, but they're gonna mend fences. That was awesome. Um, Nori, and you know about this about me. Like I think it's bad to be good natured to the point where you put yourself in danger, but Nori gives no fucks. She just walks up to this guy who falls out of the sky, who's like being all weird and shit, and she's like, I'm gonna feed him, I'm gonna like take care of him. And I'm like, Nori, I like you. Like the fact that you're just so good natured that you're just gonna help this dude because that's just like the right thing to do. Like I like you, Nori. And that's the thing about, I'm learning more and more about like myself. Like whenever I get exposed to any kind of narrative, the first thing you have to do is make me care about the characters. If you make me care about you, then I'm in. And and that's the thing. And even I'm reading now. His name is Arendir. Arendir is this like serious, like kind of, intense elf who's got a big heart because he loves himself a human, and
Yeah.
brave, and like, so like the fact that I'm even naming all these people or just talking about them and singling them out, is what has me in. And I think that whenever I feel depressed from Game of Thrones because they like do something really bad and kill someone that I like cared about, at least I can go back to like Lord of the Rings and feel like, okay, the world isn't all bad. Like there is hope, and there's just this levity, and yes, there's danger, but as long as we keep our heads about ourselves and stay true to ourselves and just be good, we can make it through together. Like I think that's what Lord of the Rings is about, you know. Um, but it's still too early for me to really know what's going on, and I'm also excited
Yeah.
to see Sauron and everything else.
that's the other thing too, is like the story is so broad, right? And I'm not, and when I started watching it, the first episode, I was a little distracted, but I think, um, at this point, um, I don't, are they about to build the rings? Like, are they building the
Yes.
forge to build the rings? Is that
Yes.
so? Okay.
Precisely.
Yeah, like because for me, before it started, I was under the impression that the rings already existed, and then they were going to be dealing with the rings. But then when they brought in the other elf dude
The king.
that went with no the
Oh,
guy that went with Elrond to the dwarves, um can't remember his name, but he was talking about building this like super
yeah.
forge, and that's when I was like, oh shit, that they're gonna build the rings. They haven't built those rings yet.
Right. It's funny
So
because now you got me going. It's like I'm trying to find the guy's name, but either way, yes, the other elf dude, exactly. Um, but yeah, so we're gonna see literally like them build these rings, and I'm just curious as to why they built the rings, and like especially considering like how much power they wield. The elves are a
well,
trip, man.
yeah, I'm trying to remember because I think that they built the rings, they made the rings for everyone, but Sauron built his own, right? Like that's his.
Oh,
I think like, but I'm rusty on that. It's been a long time since I've read the books, and really like watched the movies. Like I've seen them when they're on, but kind of caught bits and pieces and not much. Um, so
but yeah, it's funny though. Overall, I've not seen much buzz about the show, except obviously for all the controversy around the
I'm
casting.
like, come on. Yeah, like people are upset that there's black elves or black dwarves. I'm like, number one, the black elf dude is a fucking badass. So
Yes.
let's take that shit right out of the running. I don't care if he's fucking green, purple, red. The dude's awesome. So
Yeah.
just shut up. It's not like there's no reason to think that there wouldn't be black elves. There's no reason. It's like Game of Thrones is having the same problem, right? With
The
people are bitching
Valerians.
about, yeah, the dude, and I'm like, a dude looks badass to me.
Yeah.
Like he looks a little too much like King Ezekiel from The Walking Dead, but
Okay.
he's a badass. Like, and it, like the way he carries himself, the character, you're like, that dude is running some shit somewhere. But yeah, I don't get it. I don't. We're in an era where this should not be
A
even
thing.
questioned. Like I get if you read the books and everybody seemed white to you because they were written in fucking 1924 or whatever, right? Like it was, he wrote them during World War I.
Sounds about
Like
right.
it was like, yeah, like it was his escape from the war. Like he was writing them at the time. So eh, yeah, I get back then a white dude writing the characters, they'd probably all be white in the 20s, right? Like that's just who people were back then. But there's nothing in there that suggests that it should have stayed that way. Like we're in an era now where you can just shut up. We just had Everything Everywhere All at Once written for Jackie Chan and blown out of the water by fucking what's her face, Michelle Yeoh. So um, just shut up. Just just shut
So
up.
one thing I will say, and I am gonna like temper my words here, is I do remember when I was watching, particularly Return of the King, and I was like, man, like why are like the bad guys like in this battle, like they're riding these elephants and they definitely seem like browner. I'm not saying it was intentional, but I was just kind of like, and I think I even read somewhere Tolkien definitely was a bit of a racialist, and that I say racist and racialist are two different things. Racialists are more about being obsessed with race, in that race does impact your personality. So that's why like the dwarves are all like a certain way, and that's why all the hobbits are happy-go-lucky, and all the humans are just kind of corruptible, and
Yeah,
and then
elves are just
you know
bitches.
yeah, but they're
Yeah,
all like they're like the most Aryan motherfuckers you can find, basically, like in
yeah.
original books and the film. So and then fuck it, I'll say it. And then like the orcs are basically black. So it's like I definitely like I saw that shit like and okay, I'm gonna say it too. There's even a scene where like the orcs like fight over some shit. Like I forget what it is, but I think like Fro's trying to go somewhere and they literally kill each other over some shit. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm not gonna say it, but you know where I'm going with it. So it's like there's definitely some metaphorical shit here going on, and I feel like this show is just kind of way beyond that, and it's just doing the right thing. And I actually wonder to myself, I'm almost depressed. It's like, is it really just a vocal minority making this shit up, like in terms of having a problem with it, or is it really more than we think? You know, and I've actually read comments. This is getting sociological now. I read comments where people go, "Well, I wouldn't want T'Challa to be a white guy," and I'm just in my head, I'm just like, and this is what we have to deal with. Like the fact that someone thinks that like that's the same thing, like make T'Challa a white guy versus like a black elf or a Harfoot who, by the way,
Yeah,
in
we're
anyway,
not
like
talking about one character. Like if you make a movie about Winston Churchill, you're not going to cast a black guy. Like, okay, like that's fine. If you make a movie about Winston Churchill in England, there's going to be some fucking black people in England. Like, like
yeah,
like there's a difference between all of the people and an individual. So, like, some of those people, like, yeah, some people
just
in
dumb.
stories. Now, granted, you take something like Hamilton, where they said, "Oh yeah, fuck you," there's not any white people in this, and but like yeah, like that's an interesting take, right? But generally speaking, yeah, some people are always going to be white. Some people are always going to like, you're not going to make a Malcolm X movie and be like, let's
Yeah,
do a Latino Malcolm X, No, he was Malcolm X, So it's not the same. Like, yes, there's going to be a variety of people in these worlds.
and you know what?
And then on top of that, like they show it because this black elf, he's got a thing for this white human woman. Like they're crossing every possible
Thank you,
like
dude.
gap here. So
They knew what they were doing.
yeah,
You smelled that too. I love that. And and then not to even fuck it. Like, and he's not even like dark black. Like he's definitely mixed.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like,
Oh yeah,
so like whatever, dude. Like what? He's got like blue eyes or some shit. Like fucking come
yeah.
on.
The bluish greenish. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
the dude. Like I'm straight, but that dude's pretty.
No,
Like
he's a
he's a good
very good
looking
looking
dude.
dude.
Like
Let's be like yeah. No,
yeah,
we're
yeah,
both straight, but like he's good looking dude. That's why
yeah.
he's
He's a good looking dude. And so like I mean the girl's pretty, she's cute or whatever. Uh, but like his story, like, have you seen him get captured?
no, because that's the third episode. I read this
Okay, okay,
synopsis, so
okay. So
I'll get caught up. No, but talk about it. It's cool.
yeah, it's just I mean he really goes through some stuff. Like and he ends up in he ends up as a slave to the orcs,
Oh
right?
no.
And and that's really interesting. They go through all that. Um and by the end of this episode, he hasn't yet escaped, right? So he's going to go through some shit there. Um, they lose some people in the process. Like it's really interesting. I won't spoil too much of it, but it's cool. And so I'm really interested to see where the story goes because again, it's a slower pace. It's a much broader story than even Game of Thrones. Like when you're talking House of the Dragon, I mean, realistically, we're focusing on 3 or 4 characters. There's a lot more side characters that definitely have underpinnings underneath. But like in Lord of the Rings, you have 3 distinct storylines at this point. You've got the elves, you've got Galadriel, who is I think is the most amazing casting I've ever seen. Like if you tell me that's a young Kate Blanchett, I believe that's a young Kate Blanchett, right? Like it's good. And then you've got
Harfoots.
yeah, and you've got theirs and this stranger who like people are speculating is Gandalf.
Oh,
I
that
don't know.
guy's
I
got to
kind of
show up,
hope it's
dude.
not because it's I think we're
How
1,000
old is
years
Gandalf?
before.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
long
like it's a
time.
long time before the other one. So I'm hoping. I actually hope it's not Gandalf. I hope it's some other character that is interesting.
No,
I half think maybe it's Sauron.
Saruman? Exactly. I was just gonna say
Yeah,
that.
So um
Wow.
yeah, I'm super curious to see what they do with it. Um
Yeah.
so
No, I'm happy with it. And both shows, and I think it's a good transition. I think both shows I think it's a good time to be a fantasy person. I was never really huge into fantasy. Like I
no,
was in,
neither was I.
yeah, but it's like, dude, like, and what does that say about society? Like I always look at entertainment as a reflection of what society is going through. What is it about fantasy that why is it having its moment right now? Because it totally is.
Hmm.
And what I think is really exciting is that you think that people would get tired of Game of Thrones, and there's those naysayers who are all gonna come back because like fuck y'all, like oh I'm not gonna I was fooled once, I'm not gonna come back. Sorry, I know some of you are my friends, but I'm not gonna come back to Game of Thrones because you guys fooled me once. I'm like, no, dude, stop the madness, don't be a hater. It's good. Like, come back, it's fine. And apparently there's going to be all these spin-offs. It's not going to be just House of the Dragon. There's going to be more. And I
Yeah,
think
there's a
that
couple more. Yeah.
there's an appetite for it as long as it's good. I saw whenever you see a still of anything, I think it looks corny. I remember seeing the stills of the first X-Men film, and I was like, this is going to be horrible. It wasn't horrible. And I remember seeing stills of like these shows, and I was like, I'm not sold yet. I think I even said this on this pod. I'm not sold. Let me just watch these shits and find out. And both of them are actually better than I thought they were going to be. So it's an exciting time.
I agree. And I think the thing about fantasy being the thing is if you look back to when fantasy books were at their height, it was like World War I. Like that's when um the original Lord of the Rings was written. That's when like HP Lovecraft was writing like classic horror was, in and around that time. So like it's like it's an escape, right? So when things are kind of shitty in the world, it seems like that's the escape people want, right? So it probably all kicked off. When did the first Lord of the Rings movie come out? Do you know?
Yeah, 2000. Remember it like yesterday. But
Yeah, so it's, I
2000,
mean, you're right around
2002, or
9/11.
2004.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that stuff, I think it lingers, then comes back. And the other thing too is that we've talked about it before, but it's kind of generational where if you grew up on something as a kid and you become a creator, you're going to create things that you remember probably from your childhood more than anything else. And so we had the Hobbit cartoon, we had the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. Like we had this stuff that was fantasy. Like for you and I, we had Robotech and Voltron and Transformers and that stuff. Um, but there was a lot of people that had Dungeons and Dragons and that had um, the Hobbit cartoon, that had the Last Unicorn, all these fantasy things too that seem to have waned for a while, and now they're creatively back in the
Better than
world.
ever. Better and
Yeah.
bigger than ever. So, shall we move on to
Yes.
Westeros?
Yes.
From Middle Earth
So
to
we got
Westeros.
2 episodes, episodes 2 and 3 of that also, right? We didn't do the first two
Mhm.
episodes. We're on 2 and 3.
Yes.
Um, so let's see. We opened up. Now we're dealing with the fallout because the first episode ended with her becoming the heir, right? That's where it
Mhm.
ended. She's the heir. So now we jump ahead. Does it already jump ahead 2 years in the second episode? Is the this no, the son's not born because he hasn't married yet. So he's made her
So
the
it's the
heir.
second episode is 6 months, and the third episode is the 2 years.
Is 2 years, right?
Mhm.
So the second one is where he is ultimately forced to choose a bride, right? Like
Yes.
is what it comes down to. So they have just the fuck, like it comes back to like the orphan thing we talked about a couple of weeks ago. It's so creepy to like put a kid in that situation, even a kid actor, like the stuff she has to say in that part where she's like, I don't have to lay with you until I'm 14. And you're like, that's still a kid actor saying like those lines. Like that's weird. But I mean, it works, like it fits and it's all great. But what I really like is that the king isn't a dude that I would want to be king. He's not tough. Like he doesn't have the brass balls that you want your king to have, but he's not a bad man. Like
Correct.
he really doesn't want to marry this 12-year-old girl.
No.
If he had his way, he wouldn't marry anyone because he loved his wife so much. Um, the fact that she died messed him up so much, and it wasn't just because of the air thing. I think if they hadn't told him that she was going to die no matter what, he wouldn't have done that surgery. Like if he had to choose between an heir and his wife, I think he would have chosen his wife, especially the way that he talks about her later, like
Yeah.
after the fact. But because there was no choice, really, like she's going to die no matter what, he did something that still like it tore him apart. Like he was there when she was dying, and he was not okay. Um, and he seems to always be making decisions that he doesn't like making. So it's really interesting to see him go through this because he's not necessarily maturing as a character. He's not getting any stronger.
He's getting worse.
Yeah, and he's getting more ill. Like the throne keeps attacking him, basically, right? He had the cyst on his back. Now he's got the finger which he lost. So it's not going his way,
No.
right?
No, Viserys. So one thing, like we've talked about this before, like I realized a friend of mine said a saying that it totally made me introspect. The saying was, there's no one more righteous than a reformed whore, basically. Like when they're reformed, they're so judgmental about everyone, right? So I go back to people making emotional decisions and I'm so hard on them. And I realize you're so hard on them, Andrews, because it used to be that way, you know? So Viserys, I think his problem is he makes decisions based on his heart. And when
Sure.
he decided to marry Lady Alicent, yo, I literally threw up my hands as I watched the show. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you just play in the hands of like your little finger predecessor,
Yeah.
hand, like literally, like no pun intended. You've alienated your daughter. I don't see any advantage to that. Like, if I was him, as problematic as it would have been, I wouldn't marry the 12-year-old. I wouldn't touch her. It would just be political expediency, man. Like, just seriously, like keep it like, and then have her as a consort, like or whatever. Like, what
Yeah,
are you
and when
doing?
she's whatever age is, acceptable, then you worry about
Yeah,
the air thing. But like for yeah, as far as consolidating power, yeah, that would have been the way
like
to go. Now, the way that scene played out, though, at least at first, I was actually under the impression that the daughter knew. And then when you started to see like the real emotion start to play in everybody's face, I was like, how the fuck did he not tell her?
yeah.
Like how did he make that choice? But by the way, I'm going to marry your best friend. Your best friend's going to become your mommy. She's going to become the queen while you're like, that's a conversation that should probably be had, and that's one thing that's really interesting is that they open up the whole episode with this. At no point is she treated like the heir to the throne. She's still the cupbearer. Like she's still got the shit job.
Yes.
So like, what the fuck? Like she's supposed to be. She's supposed to be legit. She's supposed to be the heir. She's supposed to be everything, and she's still being treated like a little 13-year-old girl that nobody wants to have around.
Because Viserys, I mean, so because she knows, like she's like, you just want to keep it away from your brother. That's all this is. And then he even
Mm-hmm.
said to her, like in the third episode, like, yes, I did for a second think about taking it away from you, but I'm not gonna take it away. So he admitted it, like he came correct, which is why I always say, even though Viserys, like you piss me the fuck off, you mean well. But that's what's
Yeah.
gonna make your death even more tragic because
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna die, dude. Sorry, like you're not gonna last. Like because you were not, you should never have been king, in my opinion. Um, what I think is gonna be really weird though, and we're like there's so much to talk about here, but I'm gonna skip around a little bit, is apparently the episode that we're gonna drop tomorrow night. So we're gonna talk about this on the next show, is about to be nuts. Have you heard anything about what's gonna happen in the next episode?
No, I know that I don't know how far they're jumping ahead either, because I know at some point the two girls that we have are not going to be the actresses anymore. They're going to be replaced. But I thought I saw a preview that still shows these two in the next
Yeah, they're
episode.
still young, this young girls, but
Yeah.
apparently, from what I understand, some shit is gonna go down between her and like Rhaenyra and Damon.
Mhm.
Apparently, like it's all that little foreshadowing, whatever it might be on, and that to me is wow. Like you're again, I could be wrong. We'll find out after like this will air, and then like I'll be wrong, but like apparently, like yeah, they're gonna develop whatever the fuck they're supposed to be doing. And apparently, there's going to be lots of nudity and lots of sex or whatever in this episode. So it's going to be a crazy episode. Um, but I do think it's weird that that there's a weird chemistry between uncle and niece.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
again, yeah,
And I think too, it seems like one thing we're going to see is the our new queen flexing a little, like trying to hold her power, because I think it's starting to get to her that she, number one, I think that because the king did not handle the relationship with the daughter very well, with her best, with him marrying her best friend, because he didn't handle that, didn't set the expectations, didn't deal with that, that never got resolved. So you see in a later episode when she comes out and Rhaenyra's reading a book, she's just like obviously trying to get away. She's making the poor minstrel sing the same fucking song over and over again. Which is hilarious. It's what fucking moody teenage girls do all the time. They're like, "This is my song," and fucking hit play. You know, I say moody teenage girls, moody teenage boys do it too. So let's not pretend it's only girls. Um, but yeah, so and then she comes out and she's like, "Well, you should join us for the hunt," and she's like, "Nah, fuck off," you know. And she's like, "Well, blah blah blah," and then she like at some point she plays like the queen card, and I was like, "Dude, you can't do that to somebody that was your friend, somebody that you grew up with." Like, it's, I know you think you can, but she's also the
that's so
current heir
funny
to the
you say that.
throne. Like,
That's so funny you say that though. But the thing is, it's like it's so funny you say that because I legitimately respect that because like I was thinking, what else was she gonna do? Like I feel like Allison realizes that Viserys is kind of whack. I mean, you saw him at the hunt. Okay, he's drinking his ass off. He's drunk off his ass. Like he is so
mhm.
not
It
there.
is, seems like there's more to it too. Like he seems sick on top of that. Like he seems drunk and ill. Like he's kind of like, maybe he's never going to be the Mad King, but he's going a little mad, dude. Like he's slipping a little bit. Like he seems a little more suspicious about things. He seems a little more like he's watching his own back, and maybe that's really because there's another heir and another set of people encroaching on his stuff. Because in the first episode he was never worried about his brother running for the throne. He even says as much. He's like, he doesn't have any desire for the throne. He says that while he doesn't have an heir, he's never worried about it, right? So the things that are bothering him now are different. Now he's named his daughter as an heir, right? So he's got an heir there, although he trusts his daughter. He chose a wife who had a baby, and now everybody's gunning for him to change his hair. Like there's pressures on him that were never
Oh yeah,
there in the same way before. And it's driving him a little crazy, I think.
absolutely. Because again, I just don't think he should never have been king. I
No.
mean, even with his hunt thing, it was so awkward when they
Oh, and then
captured
yeah,
the
he had to
stag
kill. Yeah,
and then he like hits it and then he's like, a little more to the left, sir. Like it's like
yeah.
no,
I
in
was
front of
like,
everyone, you can't even kill the shit when it's like helpless. Yo, what's
yeah.
wrong with you? Meanwhile, fucking Rhaenyra is like stabbing, like killing shit, like blood all over her. Like she's a badass.
And then
Although
she sees the white stag
yes,
and lets it go.
yes.
Right. So I mean, that was impressive. Um, Another scene I think that was fucking amazing that I haven't seen enough people talk about, but was the scene between Rhaenyra. She's Rhaenyra, and her aunt is like Rhaenyra or some shit like that. Like their names are pretty fucking close together.
Yeah.
But that scene between them when they're looking down on her dad and the 12-year-old, and she explains to her like, you know, she doesn't necessarily like Rhaenyra. Like she's, you know, she wishes she was the queen. She's the queen that never was, right? And so there's a certain animosity there that you expect, but at the same time, like what she is telling her is heartfelt fact. Like she's like, they want to take this from you. Everybody out there wants to take this from you. Nobody wants you in this position. Even
It
if
will
your
burn
dad gave you this
down.
position,
Yep.
nobody wants you to have it. Like so, and she doesn't want to believe her. She wants to believe she's just being a bitch, but at the same time, like, no, she's like, this is the way of the world. It's, you know, it's the whole, it's a man's world conversation. Like,
Right.
she's like, it's not easy. It's not fun. You know, people, men don't want a woman in charge.
You know, it's funny. There was a meme about that though. Like, I think I maybe even posted it where it's like they juxtaposed that scene with like what's her name, Cersei Lannister, and then Danny, and like this is what happens when you get a queen. So, like,
Yeah.
it's just But anyway, but that's a sample size of two, to be fair. Um, but yeah, no, that was a great scene for sure. I thought you were going to talk about that scene where she's like, and how have you been serving the well, eating cake? Like, that was a great comeback to when that other I don't know where she was from, but it was another royal or whatever was like talking shit about uh the Targaryens. But one thing we have not talked about again is, I know that on the last podcast we talked about, I was very, I'll say it, I was kind of anti Daemon. I thought of him as evil. I thought of him as the Starscream, and I thought of him as treacherous, and even like grabbing the egg. We haven't talked about that yet, but grabbing the
Yeah,
egg
right.
was like, why are you doing this? And
It's a
like,
bit of a temper tantrum kind of thing,
oh,
right?
for
Like
sure. Yeah.
power grab. Yeah.
So that to me was like, that's some Starscream shit, okay? But when like Rhaenyra shows up and like she literally like checkmates his ass, and he just throws her back the egg, I was like, I respect you. You're not a dummy. Like you're not a dummy.
Yeah.
But let's just fast forward, dude. When he gets that letter from his brother and he reads it, now this whole episode, Matt Smith doesn't say a fucking word, okay?
No dialogue. No
No
fucking
dialogue.
dialogue.
And it's so visceral that I didn't even realize there was no dialogue until after the show. When I read it, I'm like, that's right, he didn't say a fucking word. First of all, he hits the fucking messenger, and I'm like, man, fuck you,
Beats the
dude.
shit
Like,
out of the messenger.
like, what's your problem, dude? But then he just walks out in the middle of the fucking field with a white flag. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I think that's some bullshit, but that's what they do in Game of Thrones. They lie. So, he does a white flag, then he attacks, and then he's running, the arrows. Like you see this, but I have to do this. He's running from the arrows, he's zigzagging. At first, I'm just kind of like, okay, this is some bullshit. Like, are you serious right now? Like, he's not getting hit by any of these motherfuckers. Like, boom, in the eye, done. No. But then he actually gets hit a couple of times, but he literally slices and dices his way through these motherfuckers to the point where he actually goes like the crap. Like, oh yeah, that's right. He draws everyone out. The dragons come out, and then the fucking cavalry comes, Valyrians, and it was all him. Like, he was the one to be the bait to get these fucking proud motherfuckers out. He fucking made shit happen. Then he goes in, and some people said, I wish they had shown what happened. I'm like, no, dude, it was
Nah, yeah.
more
Like that.
badass. Just go in there and come out with half his fucking
Blood
torso
covered.
gone.
Yeah.
I was like, yo, Damon, you are the fucking man. And that's why Jon Snow could do what he does, because like, I went to a concert. Yeah, I got excited. I went to a concert with Ramin Djawadi, with Game of Thrones live, Madison Square Garden, and they had a big screen while they're playing all the music live. And when that one scene where Jon Snow just by himself with the sword, while all those motherfuckers are coming at him, I'm getting chills. Like, that's what I'm talking about. And Matt
Yeah.
Smith, you did that shit, man. Like, and only the third episode in. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear people talking about, oh, I'm not going to watch Game of Thrones anymore. Man, you are missing out then,
Mhm.
because they figured it out and it's back, baby.
Well,
All right.
and if you watch the post show thing, right, the
Right. I
like the
never watched
notes,
them. Keep going.
they talk about how they needed that moment where you make the world respect this character because you need him to be that guy, right? Like you need not just us as the audience, but you need the world at large in Game of Thrones to understand that this dude is fucking epic, right? Like you can't mess with this guy anymore. And I think if I'm not mistaken, when the cavalry arrives, it is not his brother's cavalry yet. It is the people he already had with him.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. He did
Right.
all that
So
shit
so he did
before.
this whole thing without the king's help, which I
Correct.
think is what pissed him off, as he was like, fuck,
Correct.
if I don't do this now,
Yes.
then it's gonna look like my brother saved the day. And he
Correct.
needed that moment. Um, but like I've kind of been Team Damon from the first
I know.
episode.
I know.
Like when because I don't think he's as bad as they've made him out to be either. Like he threw his temper tantrum, he stole his egg, but in the first episode, he's the one that is fully behind Rhaenyra. He's like, you have to step up right here. You have to, essentially start the funeral pyre. You have to do all this stuff. Um, but he says it to her in a very kind way. When he deals with her, even on when they're getting the egg back, like, he's King Dick until she shows up. And then he's immediately like, well, fuck, like there's something about him and her that
Yeah.
he can't fight. Right. So that, like you said, that's probably what we're going to see in the next episode. And, it's just, I don't think he's all bad. Like he's a crazy motherfucker. Like you saw that with the gold cloaks and I mean, chop some dude's dick off in the middle of the square. Now, granted, the guy was a criminal of some kind. I don't know that we entirely knew what. Um, I assume at that point that it was probably rape or something
Exactly.
bad to receive that punishment. But um, yeah, I'm still Team Damon and Team Rhaenyra, and I almost would rather see them on the same side than opposite sides. So we'll see what happens with them. I think you posted there was I don't know if it was, I'd call it a meme, but there was something that showed when they were talking about this age in the original Game of Thrones. They were talking about this age of stories and how uh, the history books were about, essentially Rhaenyra Targaryen and her half brother in their battle for the throne. And they discussed it in Game of Thrones before House of the Dragons, was even a thing. So they've known what the story is, and it sounds like the ultimate battle is, like politically speaking, anyways, is between her and the little 2-year-old that we're gonna have to watch grow up in the next,
Yeah.
however many episodes. Um, and I don't know how many seasons they have planned. I don't know how long they intend it to go. Um, I really kind of hope, especially if they have other spin-offs planned, that they know where they're going.
Yes.
Like I hope that they know that, we have point A and point B, and everything in between can be anywhere from 2 to 5 seasons, and you can stretch out some storylines or whatever. But I hope they have an end point in mind,
Yeah.
because you need that for the storytelling, especially if you're going to do time jumps. Like if we're going to jump periods of time, at some point you can't jump any further because no one's going to watch 2 80-year-old women, duke it out. And that's the thing too. Like I think Alicent is kind of slowly becoming the Cersei, maybe not as brilliant as Cersei, right? Like she was a smart bitch. Um, like she was a bad person, but she was smart.
Very.
And I don't think Alicent, at least at this point, is
No.
quite that conniving.
He's her dad's
But I think
puppet
at
right
some
now.
point, yeah, exactly. Well, it's her grandpa. That's
Oh, it's her
like
grandpa. My bad.
it's her grandfather. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know that. I was corrected on that. I think in the third episode by somebody. Um, but yeah, he's kind of running the show. But I would think if the time jump's big enough to where the girls are adults, he may
Yeah.
not be around anymore.
Right.
Um, but she'll have then been involved in the politics game for so long at that point that I think she's going to become a little shiftier. Um, and that's an interesting dynamic too. Like two former best friends who were like tight now are up against each other because just of the one decision that her dad made. Like if her dad had decided to marry the 12-year-old girl, they'd
None of
still be
you
best
haven't.
friends, hanging out, reading books to each other under the tree. Like so, yeah, it's interesting. I'm really excited for episode 4. Like I'm genuinely excited for every episode that's coming out right now. The first episode was good. The first episode was good, got me in. This episode, like you said, with the whole Damon thing, I'm like, dude, I'm 100% team Damon right now. Like he's the dude, and this show, at least at the moment, is kind of his show.
Oh yeah.
Like I know there's other people in charge, other people are making the decisions and doing the things, but man, Damon Targaryen is a badass.
I'm glad you said that because I was going to tack on my thought, but not to tack it on anymore. It's actually organic. So what I love about Damon as well, his badassness is earned. Because remember, Sir Kristen Cole fucking defeated him in that joust tournament,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
literally actually even at the when they're getting the eggs. I remember you, like I knocked you off your horse or something. Like he
Yeah,
literally
yeah, he
talked
talked a little
back
shit.
to him,
Talked a
you
little
know.
shit.
So I like that. Like I like that. Damon. I respect anyone, fiction or otherwise, who can just kind of look at themselves and fucking improve versus be like feel sorry for themselves or whatever. And Damon's a motherfucker who's like, well, I could sit here and be mad my brother's gonna try to save my ass, or I can do something about it. And he fucking did
Yeah,
something about it, and he did it well. So it's like I think Kristen and Damon they might have a rematch, and it's gonna be fucking lethal. And because I think Kristen's kind of like, he probably likes Rhaenyra too. So there could be a little love triangle thing going on
well,
there.
and two, they the king did have a great conversation with her at one point before he fucked up and decided to bang her best friend. But or no, it was actually after. It's in the third episode because he's like, because she gets all pissed because he's trying
Yeah,
to set her up with people, and he's like, I'm not doing that to increase my own power. He's like, I'm doing that for you.
to be
He's
happy.
like, not just to be happy, but so that she has the things that she needs to be successful. Like if she marries into a powerful family, when she becomes queen, that becomes part of her thing, right? So that's what he's trying to set up. But then he's like, look, you do you. Go find your person, whatever, if that's what you want to do. He's like, do it,
Yeah.
and so that like, he loves his daughter.
Oh
He's not
yes.
good at it. He's
No.
just like so many other things in the show. He's not good at life.
Like
Like,
when he was
but
yelling at her in public to the point where they had to be like, "Sir, like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, this is not kingly behavior to
well,
be."
not just that, but that conversation was one that did not do him any favors because he was literally saying, I didn't want to marry this girl. He's like, I didn't like, if you listen to the conversation, he's literally saying, I didn't want to do that. I had to do that like right in front of her. I mean, of course, to a degree, that in these kinds of situations, right? Like
Still, yeah, you're
kings
right. For
marry for power, not
fealty,
for
yes.
love. Uh, but to have it yelled out in front of everyone, like they were like, shut the fuck up, you know. So,
Oh
but
man.
yeah, yeah, it was a good episode. It was a good episode. I'm excited that tomorrow night, although everybody's not going to hear this on Wednesday, tomorrow night is the next episode, and we're gonna get it because I probably won't watch it as it streams, but I will watch it probably first thing the next morning. Like I'm ready for it. Um, so
And I'm already sad because do you know how many episodes there are this season?
is there 8?
Okay, well that's better than that. It's 10. But I'm
Okay.
still like I'm still a little like, okay, so what are we gonna do? It's gonna be like that meme of like Narcos where that guy's like standing in his like backyard
Yeah,
and
just
like,
at
what's
the
it? Yes, like what are we gonna do when game? It's gonna be another like year and a half. Like, are you serious right now? Fuck.
Yeah, but I know I mean, they're developing the other shows, so we're gonna get some other Throne stuff. Like they're
Okay.
doing a whole Jon Snow show. Like
Yeah.
he's getting his own series. Um, it's funny. I think HBO needed this to land too because they were going through some shit, right? Um, and this took a lot of heat off for this to be a real success. And I think it became their most successful show ever, including the original Game of Thrones. This
Yeah.
thing blew up. So
Good
it's a
for
pretty
him.
big deal. So yeah, so I'm stoked. I'm excited for more Lord of the Rings. For as different as it is, at least a couple of the characters are compelling. The things that are happening are compelling. It's just a different pace. Like Game of Thrones comes hard. Like the stuff that's happening again, it's
Hard and
more of a
fast.
single storyline,
Mhm.
with side characters, where Lord of the Rings is a little slower and you've got branching storylines, stuff like that. Um, so again, two very, very different shows. Um,
And not competing.
and
I saw like a thing that said
yeah,
if you watch one, you're probably gonna watch the other, you know? So it's like that's awesome too. Like everyone's winning. Everyone's winning.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And they feed, like I said, two completely different niches. Like I think what makes Game of Thrones interesting is that the world that it's built in is similar enough to ours, like Westeros and not just Westeros. What's the capital city? The one they're in.
I know, I know. Oh,
I said
King's Landing.
Westeros as a whole.
King's
There you
Landing.
go. Like King's Landing has a very English feel to it, like a very English castle feel to it, right? When you watch Lord of the Rings, none of that stuff feels like our world, right? Like that's a whole
It's a
different
fantasy world.
fantasy
Yeah.
world. So it's just two different feels, two different worlds, and two different things altogether. So yeah, they're both fantasy, but that's like saying two sci-fi shows are the same. There's different kinds of
Star Trek
sci-fi.
and
There's
Star
your
Wars,
heady,
basically.
yeah, absolutely, or something like what's the artificial intelligence one that just came out that we loved with Ex Machina, right? you
Okay.
can you can have Ex Machina, and then you can have the Expanse, right, which is
Yeah.
outer space. So yes, they're the same genre, but they're a completely different subgenre. So it's good. It's good to give people both, and for people to like both is cool, because I was not a fan of the Wheel of Time. Like it just didn't get me. um his Dark Materials didn't quite grab me when that one landed. um but these two shows, for me, and I know everybody's different, but these two shows have me very, very interested. So
Same.
yeah.
We're gonna be talking about them for a while. In the meantime, we'll see what else comes up next week because hopefully you guys will get sick of us talking about She-Hulk, Lord of the
Yes.
Rings, and Game of Thrones, but they are definitely going to be some mainstays, I think, for a
Yeah,
while.
I have a feeling. I have a feeling next week Morbius and Moonfall may come up again, because everybody else will have probably watched them in our little
Andy, I love
group.
you, but you probably loved Morbius. I just based
I'm
on the track
sure
record.
he did. As a matter of fact, I think he said he loved it when it came in the theater. And man, that was just a
No.
fucking dumpster fire. It was the worst. It was the worst. It was the worst.
Yes.
It's the worst Sony Pictures release, and I don't want them to do anything else ever again. Um, except for Spider-Man with Marvel's hand on their hand guiding them. Um, but yeah, I think with that we've filled our quota of people's time. I think we kept it pretty tight,
We
which
did.
is good. That's the goal. We're trying to keep it tight, keep people interested. And yeah, next week obviously we're gonna have what right now is kind of our big three. That probably be that way for a while, so we'll have to definitely sneak in some other stuff. I don't know if what's landing in this. We'll talk about D23 next week. We didn't really get to talk about that.
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff coming out of that today and tomorrow, that will be interesting. I heard there was an Indiana Jones 5
Yes.
trailer. I haven't seen anything about it. I just know that it may be one of those ones too. I don't know if there was an actually release trailer or if it was special super secret for D23 people. So we'll have to figure that out. But we'll talk about that next week. And hopefully we'll have more people. If we don't, dude, we're pretty fucking cool, man. We're a lot of fun. I think we do all right on our own. So if it's just us, we'll survive. I wouldn't mind getting Kim back here, because for me, I'm really curious about the female take on She-Hulk more than anything else. Although I would love a female take on both Lord of the Rings and even more so Game of Thrones. I think this Game of Thrones is a very female driven series, so having the female insight on that is a big deal. And if I don't have to explain childbirth to a woman again, that'd be great too. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, so for everybody watching or listening, if Pete ever decides to rip the audio and post it, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If it's the podcast, thank you for downloading. Don't forget to like and subscribe, the usuals, but please comment, like let us know what we can be doing better. Let us know what you like, and let us know what you think of She-Hulk. I think that's our biggest question right now is, if you're watching She-Hulk, why do you love it? Why do you hate it? Whatever.
Yeah.
What is it that gets you going one way or the other? Because I think that's the biggest question for me. Like, if you hate Game of Thrones, tell me why, because I'd be curious as hell to see why anybody doesn't like it right now. But yeah, so by all means, Leah, keep commenting. You're our best commenter, but I would love to see a few more people comment too. But yeah, with that, we'll see you next week.
Deuces.
It looked good. Like, the visuals were great. It's just every single thing that was even remotely scientific was just fucking wrong. Like, I'm sitting there with my kids and like something happened and like my 11-year-old is like, really, dude? And like, we were dying. Like, we were laughing so hard because like Patrick Wilson's a decent actor. He's not great, but he's decent. Halle Berry's a good actress. She's won an Oscar. Like, you've got the pieces, right? Oh, man, is a bad movie. But like the crazy thing is, like, it was so bad in such a ridiculous way that when it was over, I was kind of like, I'd probably watch that again. Like,
ow,
just because it was so, like, it was so wrong. Like, everything was so wrong. Like, if the moon got closer to the Earth, water wouldn't start going up into the sky. That's not how it works. Like,
I trust you because you're a physics dude. So I'm just looking at it like, this is fucking cool. Like I'm just like, literally, yeah.
And that's what drove me crazy. I'm like, okay, like, I can get over the moon being a big flying demon monster thing, with AI, right? Like, whatever. But like, I can get over the moon being basically an entity, right? Like, it's an AI, it's all that. Fine, it's ridiculous, but fine. Like, in science, you have the idea of a Dyson sphere, where in like somewhere that's potentially uninhabitable, if there was a star you could build around rather than almost like what they built, right? That's the other thing. Like, so they were built all their stuff around a white dwarf, which is insanely radioactive. If there was a white dwarf that close to our planet, we'd all be dead. Like, even if it was inside a planet, we'd all be dead. But it doesn't matter. But like those rings that they had circling it, like, the idea behind that is a Dyson sphere, where you take a sun or a star of some kind, and you essentially build around it within the proper proximity, so you get all the energy, you get all the stuff that you need to create and sustain life. So that there's some scientists that are looking for stuff beyond our solar system are like actually looking for structures like that. They don't expect to find them necessarily, but like, if there were alien civilizations that have lasted a long time, potentially there would be something like that out there, right? I mean, you have to I think was it Fermi's paradox, where it's a calculation that basically says no life in the universe is just ridiculous. Like there's a certain number that you can say that there should be this many civilizations out there. So looking for it isn't necessarily the stupidest thing. Now expecting aliens to come here and land on our lawn and fucking party with us is a whole other thing. But like when you look out with the telescopes we have, when we're looking back 13 billion years at this point, um, the idea that we would see something isn't completely ridiculous. So that was the part that too that even my kids were like, "Wait, what?" Is when they're like, "Yeah, we planted DNA on Earth," and it shows them creating the Earth, and then you're like, "Wait, did they wait until the dinosaurs came and went before they planted human DNA?"
That's what your text was about.
Like,
You just skip the
yeah,
dinosaurs.
yeah. I was like, "What?" I was like, there's so many problems because like the Earth is. I know I'm going to get it wrong. The universe is 13 billion years old. I think the Earth is 4 billion years old, or our solar system is 4 billion. I have to look it up, but we're on the scale of billions also. So like, if they created it, they would have created it and then just been like, "Cool, we'll wait." Because like we talked about it in one of the posts on Facebook about like if you look at the Earth or the universe as a calendar, like humanity is like December 30th. Like we're so far down the line that like it's ridiculous. So there's so many problems with that movie, like an insane amount of problems with that movie.